Today's video is going to be my outlining tips. I have already covered drafting and editing, so now we are going back to the very beginning of the writing and creative process and talking about the outlining tips. Now, I outline fairly simply. I don't do a lot of detailed outlines for world or character, simply because I do a lot of that in my head, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to put it on paper. For some background, I write a dark fantasy adventure series that is titled Draco and Luna. Book 1 is out now, I'll leave the link down below. I'm also in the process of writing my first short story collection in the Damned and Forgotten saga. And those short stories are a collection of 5 vampire stories that fall under the dark romance fantasy genre. I also have a demon short story collection that I will be working on this year, as well as vampire novellas and more of the Draco and Luna series. They all fall under dark fantasy and dark romance. Most of my novellas, short stories, and novels all fall within the same world, just at different points in the timeline. That being said, I don't go in-depth world planning on paper. I keep kind of the most important things, so what countries they're visiting, what the countries are known for, and kind of how the country geography layout-wise is. So if they have a lot of mountains, if they have a lot of like plains and fields, things like that, or forests. I also make note of who runs that country or runs parts of it. In our world, we deal with kings and queens, so we have the strongholds, we have the kingdoms, we have all of that type of stuff. I keep notes on the most important things of the countries, but I don't go super in-depth with who's trading with who and what do they export, what do they import, because I keep a lot of that stuff just in my head. Same with characters. A lot of my character planning, I'll keep the main important things of each character on paper, so I'll keep what they look like, what their personality is, what part of the story, or what role in the story they play. So with my vampire character, Eric, at the start of his series, he is a human and he gets turned into a vampire. And then throughout his series, he works at becoming the Vampire King. Obviously, when I'm planning his character, my notes for him would be that he's human when he starts. He's, I think, 27 when he starts. So he gets turned into a vampire, and he wants to become king. And those are kind of the main points I'll keep about the characters, and then I'll do some personality. I really like to describe him as my manipulative, caring king. Because while he is quite manipulative in how he deals with other people, he typically does everything for the good of his kingdom, and he is a genuinely good king. I will also make note on what series they appear in, because I have some characters, like my Vampire King Eric, that appear in multiple series. He appears in the Sundown Chronicles, which is his series. He appears in the Draco and Luna series as a slightly minor, but still a main character. He appears in the Adventure High series as, again, a slightly minor character. And he appears in Luna and Draco's Adventures, which is separate from the main series. He appears in that as a minor character. So I'll keep notes of what series they appear in as well, but I don't go super in-depth on paper. My super in-depth plan is my plot. I start, and this is my first tip, I start by writing down every idea that pops into my head about the book. So, if I'm taking Draco Luna Book 1, the main plot of that is Luna and Draco have to travel to Port Misty to save the kingdom from a mysterious illness. So I would start making notes of anything that I think might work with that book. Some of it could be that someone cursed the kingdom. It could be that it's just a airborne illness, like a cold or a flu or something like that. You know, think like Black Plague. It could be food poisoning. Someone within the kingdom is poisoning the food to make people sick because they want to be king, or they want to take out the king, or they want to weaken the army for an invasion. I will write down all the ideas I have. Sometimes I have quite a list. I've had it before where I have filled a full page or multiple pages with ideas. Sometimes I only have a couple, and that sometimes I also use that as the, is this story worth me writing? Or is it going to make a full-length novel? If I only have a couple ideas, I might decide to do it as a short story or a novella, which I plan to write all three. I'll do another video explaining what I mean by write all three. But I also do that. If I don't have enough ideas for what I think will be a full-length novel, I might look at doing a novella or a short story. So, tip 1, brainstorm everything you can. It doesn't matter if you think it fits or not, just brainstorm. Tip 2, I then go in and sort that list into ideas that I actually want to use or can use, and ideas that I realize don't really fit for where I want the story to go or what I want the story to turn into. This can take just a few minutes or a couple hours, depending how many ideas you have, things like that. My third tip is to break the list of, now I have the list of what I want and all the ideas I can use, now I'm going to break them into chapters or acts or scenes. Typically, I find dealing with the big list, it's easier to go acts first. So what do I want in my first act, what do I want in my second act, and what do I want in my third act? I use the 3-act structure. If you use more, divide them as you need to. When I have all the acts figured out, then I go through and make my chapter list and my scene list. From there, my next tip would be to then figure out the order they need to be in, because I don't worry too much about ordering them any specific way until I have them broke down into the acts and the scenes and the chapters. Then I will go through each act and I will, okay, this should be the first chapter, this one should be down here, and split them up that way. It doesn't have to be perfect. There are some times that I find as I'm writing that this idea shouldn't really fit in chapter 3, it's probably better a bit later on. Normally when that happens, I make note and just continue on. My final tip is also don't stress. Don't try to make this big, gigantic outline because this author does or this YouTuber does. Make the outline that fits for you. If you're a pantser trying to get into outlining, start small. Don't think you have to spend a month or a week on it because your favorite author tuber does. I can outline a novel in just a couple hours. I think the longest I've taken has been maybe 3. And that's simply because the only thing I super outline in detail is my plot. Other than that, I can kind of do everything in my head. I will write stuff down if I need to, but typically the plot is... So like I was saying, I can do an outline, the plot outline, the synopsis outline, in just a couple hours. When I do slightly plan my characters or my world, it only, again, takes me a handful of hours to do everything. I don't spend a lot of time on the outline. I don't spend a lot of effort into making it this huge thing. Some of the writers I know have 3, 4, 5, 6,000 word outlines. If it works for you, that's great. But it is very okay to have those short little outlines. And even most of my outlines are, when I break them down scene by scene or chapter by chapter, they're just bullet points. I don't go into any grave detail. I just do Draco fights monster here. Luna heals family. Just very quick, very generic, this is what happens in the chapter, and then I just build around it as I write. So those are my outlining tips and how I outline. Hopefully it was helpful to some of you. Everything will be linked down below. Any books that have already been published will be linked down below.